The last year we spoke about what's in Sa'if Aleph regarding מכירה, באונס. Now we're going to continue סימן in Sa'if Aleph regarding the dinim of Mesiras Midah. Mesiras Midah is giving a notice before that you want to have the action retroactively invalidated. The Mechaber says, and towards the end of Sa'if Aleph, that if the moicher who is being forced gave him midah before he sold, in front of Eidim, and the Eidim know that there was an oinus, they recognize the oinus, then it works. And the sale that comes afterwards is retroactively invalidated, even though we say that Mechira B'Oinus works because of Gmirus Das, that we say you agree to sell because you're going to make money. But over here, since you gave him a midah before, the midah kicks in and protects you from whatever's going to happen afterwards. The Smev right away explains that the mashmos of the Mechaber is, not only do the Eidim have to know that you were forced, that there's an oinus on you, some form of oinus, but that the oinus is forcing you to sell. That means it could be sometimes that we're going to discuss it later, that you have an oinus, and to relieve yourself from the oinus, you voluntarily do something. But here he says, the mashmos of Mechaber is that you have to have, that the Eidim have to know the oinus, what the form of extortion is by force, and that your sale is because of this action. And Smith says, I already proved in Prisha that it's not so, that you don't need the Eidim, don't have to know that the sale is that the forcing was on the act of selling, rather that there is a oinus on you, and that the oinus has not been removed from you until the moment you sold. That means they don't have to know that you were forced to sell, they have to know that there's an oinus, that the oinus has been, the gun has been on your head until you did what you have to do, until you did this sale. And that is already enough. They don't have to know that the sale was also done by oinus. And he explains it could be the Mechaber holds the same way. By the way, if you look in the Ktsas over here, he goes into a discussion, I'm not going to go into it, whether the Mesiras Midah has to be before the action. Obviously, you can't do it by oinus. That doesn't work. But Mesiras Midah has to come with a written Ksav Midah, a written zettel that confirms that the Midah was said. The Ktsas goes into a discussion, does you need to have the writing of the Ksav before the Mechira also, or it's enough if you just say it and the writing was done afterwards. Now that's just as a side point, you should just know about it. And the logic pretty much goes into a lot of shtaris. Is it does the document create the reality, or does the document only used for the purpose of confirming the reality in case somebody disputes it? Anyways, back to what we said before, that according to the Smei, says the Eidim do not have to know that the sale was done by force. They only have to know that the oinus has not been removed from him until the moment of sale. And the Sivis in Biurim Sivkot and Vav says, no, that's not enough. That it's clear that the Eidim have to know that the sale is because of the oinus. And you have the shit of the Smeh. What the Smeh is trying to tell you is not that, like we understood the Smeh, that the sale is, that you don't have to know that the sale was done because of the oinus. The Smeh is trying to tell you is that you have to make sure that the Eidim have to make sure that the oinus did not lose it's still as potent as it was at the moment that it started. In other words, there could be oinus which is, you have a big oinus and it switches to a small oinus. And this one, he says, no. The oinus has to be the same force from beginning to end. And then obviously you sold because of the oinus. But the Nesiv still disagrees and says, the Eidim have to know that the actual sale is because of the oinus. And you're going to soon later see the Nesivis Lashitase, there are certain things where the Nesivis is going to explain that you do something to remove the oinus from yourself, lav dafka, that is considered an action the action is considered based on the Oinus. The Erech HaShulchan over here from Rav Tayeb, Sif Kotten Gimel, brings a Rashba, and the Rashba is in Even HaEzer Siman Kuf Lamed Daled, and this is going to be referenced a few times in the Siman. Why? Because Siman Kuf Lamed Daled in Even HaEzer is the halachas of forcing a get, and therefore over there you have forcing a get, and over there you have Maidah, that before the get is forced, because Kofen has actually Maidah, and if you give Maidah before or not, and the din of Bittul Maidah. So that's why in this Siman you're going to have references to Even HaEzer Siman Kuf Lamed Daled more often than in other places, because that's where the topic is discussed. Over there, the Erech HaShulchan brings from Rashba, which is brought in Beis Yosef and Even HaEzer Kuf Lamed Daled, that the Eidim that you say it in front have to be Eidim Ksherim, but if it's Eidim Psulim, it doesn't work. Which is an interesting thing, because what's the logic for Mesiras Midah? That I am giving a Gilui Das beforehand, and this you're going to see is Machlekes and back and forth, which all center, nobody really focuses on this point, but this is the focal point of this discussion. Mesiras Midah is a Gilui Das, essentially. I am telling you before I start that anything I'm going to be doing in this, I know that I'm going to be forced to do something. I'm telling you I'm going to do it because I'm forced. I'm notifying you that even though my actions might imply that what I'm doing is beratzen, or maybe not beratzen, just by agreement, it doesn't have to, just by haskama, still not so. So, why would you need? Some say that no, it's not enough to just have a Gilui Das. Gilui Das has to be confirmable afterwards in front of Eidim, and otherwise it's as if you never said it. And that's one way of looking at it. And one way of looking at it is that, and the nafkaminas are Eidim Psulim, Eid Echad, any of those forms. However, if you say that is because of Shnei Eidim is only for the purpose of confirming afterwards, in case there is a doubt, why? What's going to be afterwards with the Mesiras Midah? You're going to go with the Mesiras Midah to Bezdin 2 weeks later. You can say, I want my land back. I want my car back. I want my cow back. Why? The Mechira was fake. So then the guy is going to say no. The buyer is going to say no, it wasn't. The Mechira was not fake. It was a real Mechira. He says, no, I have Mesiras Midah. Then you have to have the Eidim, and the Bezdin has to confirm what happened. So then you might need kosher Eidim. But if it's only mitzat Gilui Das, and the Mechira is never Chal, so who has to prove that something happened? The buyer, not the seller. Who becomes the Maitzi over here? Who becomes the Muchzuk? If it's a Gilui Das Milchatchila, that means the Mechira never kicked in. Who has to bring a Raya? Just because Gazlan is not a Muchzuk.
A Gazlan is a Muchzuk, no.
Only after certain, not at the moment of right away.
So, no, but then.
I'm saying these things are not fully fleshed out in this.
He's going to just come and bring a raya that he bought it. He'll bring a star, whatever it was,
and he's going to bring it. Say, I have a Gilui Das. I have rayas for a Gilui Das. Who's stronger? Is it the Mechira which has to be undone, or is it that there was no Mechira to begin with? He's trying to prove the Mechira to begin with. Well, does he have to bring a proof? Who has a stronger burden of proof? That's the real question over here. Anyway, so he says, in Sivkot and Daled, and Sivkot and Gimel, he brings from the Rashba that you have to say in front of Eidim Kshedim, and in front of Psul Meis doesn't work. And Sivkot and Daled, he adds a thing. He says, by the way, the Eidim do not have to. He brings from a certain opinion that the Eidim do not have to see the Oinus. It's enough that they recognize the Oinus. And he brings Shittis. What does it mean, recognize the Oinus? Does it mean that the Eidim recognize and know about the Oinus from their own independent verification, or that they relied on the opinion of on the notice from the seller that he told them that it's because of that? Yeah, we're going to get to it a little bit later. We're going to go back into this topic. I'm just pointing it out now because I mentioned Erech HaShulchan that there is a discussion what's considered lahakir ba'onsa, if it's from one or from two. The Beis Yaakov over here, Sifkat and Beis, since we're discussing Edom, he says that if you say it in front of two Edom, Shezeh Shaloi Bifnei Zeh, it still works. He doesn't know if they're kosher or not, but he says two Edom Zeh Shaloi Bifnei Zeh, it also works as long as two people know, By get you could do it. By get the two in front of each other, yeah. He says over here it works without it. Pamayne Zov, Shaloi Bifneim is?
If it's one without that, tell them.
He says, I tell one, then I go and tell the other one. That's what Beis Yaakov brings from the Rivash. There's an interesting, Pamayne Zov says with a takon in Morocco, that every Mesiras Midah to be valid has to be done in front of at least one dayan from the Bezdin. Those two people, one of them had to be a dayan from the Bezdin. Why? Not because a dayan is more kosher than a regular person, but rather to prevent an issue that somebody's going to claim that he had an oinus, and this is not a halachic oinus. So you had to have a dayan from the Bezdin to confirm that the Mesiras Midah, that yes, you have an oinus. Who says it's a real oinus? Is this considered an oinus? We know, What? Doesn't decide. The dayan knows Shulchan Aruch, and he knows what's considered an oinus and what's not considered an oinus. There's a whole body of work of whether a oinus minafshe, you impose the oinus on yourself. It's an oinus. In Hilchos Gittin, it's discussed much more than here. What's considered an oinus? Yeah, so you have to have a dayan. That was a takon in Morocco. And if the Bezdin did not confirm that the oinus is a valid oinus, then the Midah has no validity. And then he says, if it was under pressure, real pressure, like the sale had to happen now, and they weren't able to find a dayan that could come running to the place, or they didn't know that you need a dayan, they were not aware of the takana because they're from out of town, and he says that the Sefer Kerem Chemor says that over there, but the evidence is fine even without the dayan. But the takana, the established takana was, you have to have a dayan making sure that the oinus is good. Now, the Shoshanas Yaakov in Sifkat and Gimel goes into an interesting discussion. The discussion is about the yesod of why a meidah is needed. Right? So we know that if you give a meidah, and the meidah is kosher in front of two edim, and then the meidah kicks in, the meidah works. They knew the oinus, they recognized the oinus, everything was good. But why? He says, what happens if you're in a city which has a bezdin? So now, the buyer says, I'm not a gvar alam, I am a tzayis dina. What kind of oinus is there here? If he has a problem, we have a bezdin available. We could have gone to bezdin. He doesn't have to be meiser meidah. Could have gone to bezdin and worked everything out. So l'cha'ira, a tzayis dina should not, the meidah shouldn't work if the guy is a tzayis dina. He brings to the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef in Mechudash Dalet says that all the paiskim did not make a differentiation regarding meidah between a tzayis dina and lo tzayis dina. Not by matane, not by mechira. Matane, we're going to see in Sif Beis. And the Beis Yosef says, even though from the Ramban it's mashma, that in a place where the bezdin has a koyach to force, from the Ramban says that in a place where the person is tzayis dina, we don't do meidos. The Beis Yosef says mashma from the Ramban that in a place where the government gives the power to bezdin to be done bekfiyah, so nobody can escape the koyach of bezdin. So there's always a bezdin available. You can't write a meidah. And it's mashma from the Ramban that if the person is tzayis dina, then you can't do a meidah. So the Beis Yosef says no, nobody else, no posek follows the Ramban, and therefore we're not following the din of the Ramban. Everybody does not make a difference between tzayis dina and lo tzayis dina, and therefore that's how it should always write a meidah. And the Shoshanas Yaakov says that's the reason why the Tur, the Mechaber, the Rama, nobody mentions tzayis dina and lo tzayis dina, because they're following that the Maisa. Nobody took the opinion of the Ramban. And he says, you look in Mokem Shmuel, the Shal Shuas Mokem Shmuel, Mokem Shmuel discusses this topic, and he's the one who says that that's the reason why the Mechaber and the Tur and the Ramah did not mention anything. However, he says the Mokem Shmuel goes and gives you a a carve out for the dinim of Meidah. And he says, the Malkim Shmuel comes with this idea that if the moicher, the seller, has clear rayas and has edim, and everything to be able to support him in Bezdin, then Takem Meidah should not work. Why? Because he's so confident, he's 100% sure it's going to work out for him in Bezdin. Why does he need to give him Meidah? So Meidah shouldn't work in such a case. Only when it's something which is open to debate, and therefore he's worried that if he's going to go to Bezdin, he's not going to be able to retain his possessions, then we say, then the Meidah helps. The Shan Sakaf says, no. Being that the Beis Yosef says that one of the ideas of the Beis Yosef is that even if there's a Bezdin in town, maybe the Bezdin is not going to be available at the time, at the moment when you need them for this case. Therefore, we always do a Meidah even for a Tzayis Din. And therefore, the Oines is still on him. He says the same logic would apply even if you have Rayas Brutus. So therefore, what the Malkim Shmuel says is the difference between whether you have Rayas Brutus. You have Rayas Brutus is not a good one. Right? Now, the Beis Yosef says nobody follows the Ramban, right? However, the same Tzemach Tzedek that I mentioned last year, Reish Samach Beis. It's a long Tzemach Tzedek regarding Meidah in Oines and Meidah in a get. Says the Ketshuva. And last year I only mentioned the first two Oisius and the last, because that was relevant to that year. Today I'm going to mention two other ones. One I'm going to mention now. In Sif Hey, of the Tzemach Tzedek, Siman Reish Samach Beis, Ois Hey. When he's discussing over there about dinim of Meidah, if a bittul Meidah works, if a Meidah was given. But derech agav, who does he mention? Only the Ramban. And he says, based on the Ramban, that you don't write the Meidah for somebody who's tzayis dinner. Why? Because he could avoid the oines by coming to Bezdin. And therefore, a Meidah in such a scenario is not a Meidah because it's not really an oines. Yeah, and then he continues discussing. And he doesn't bring any opinion for Kert. Only brings the Ramban. So in this, I went through it, I went back and forth, to see if it mentions the other opinions in this matter. I didn't find them. Yeah, that's just by the way. So even though the Beis Yosef says the Ramban is a Das Yachid, nicht so poshut. Now, let's continue. The Shach, and Sifkot, Reish Samach Beis. That's the same one I said last time. It's in Even Ezer, not Chesed Mishpat. Even Ezer Chelik Beis, Siman Reish Samach Beis. It's about a get. The Shach in Sifkot Daled says, I saw in the Divrei Rivos a psak tamuha. A psak that makes no sense to me. What was the psak tamuha? He writes it very shortly, but the Nesivis brings you the full story. Basically, Reuven owed money to a guy. And he didn't pay him on time. The guy told him, either I'm going to get the money out of you or whatever, do something to you, or I could extend the loan, the interest-free loan for a year, but then you have to pay me ribis, pay me interest. It's mutter, it's a guy, right? And the Yid had no choice, he agreed. Now, almost a year passes, and now the Yid, Reuven, needs a favor from the guy. Maybe the guy's the Paritz, maybe he's whatever, the sheriff of town. He needed something from him. And he goes to him and says, I need a favor, this and this favor. So the guy says, you want a favor from me? No problem. Confirm in writing that you owe me the ribbis. I want that you owe me the money plus the ribbis. Fine, the Yid agreed and did it. Now what did the guy do? He doesn't want to be busy chasing the Yid for money with ribbis. And he went and he found Shimon, who was a Yid, and told Shimon, listen, I have here the shtar that Reuven owes me $100,000 plus 20% interest, $120,000. I'll sell it to you for a discount. You go collect 120, I'm selling it to you for 100, 110. The guy made his money back. Now Shimon comes and calls Reuven to Bezdin, $120,000, you have a shtar chayv. Yeah, we're not going into discussions in Hilchas Ribis, which is, in this case, it would be mutter. Yeah? Through the guy, and the guy was the one who did it. Yeah, so then the Divrei Rivos says that Ribis is a matana. Ribis is not a mecher. Ribis and matana. And matana we're going to see in Sif Beis. Matana is different. And now, how did the goy receive the ribis, which is a matana, through oines? So a matana, which was in skabel ba'oines, doesn't kick in. And therefore, the Reuven, the Shimon, cannot collect the ribis from Reuven. And the Shach says, psak tamua. Doesn't make sense to me. Why doesn't it make sense then? Ribis is a matana. It's not something, you're not getting anything for it. Matana smois is in luftarai. What? It wasn't what?
No, I think the guy did give something.
You gave him nothing.
No?
What, the favor?
Yeah.
The favor was for the shtar. It's exactly what the Sivus is going into. Sivus says you have to make a differentiation.
He extended the loan.
Okay, but he didn't receive anything for it. Extension of time is a spiritual thing. Not spiritual. That's why ribis is also. Because you're not giving anything for extension of time. Amtana Zman is the reason why ribis is also, because Amtana Zman is nothing. Your coins are not losing value, That's later. That's exactly when the Sivus is going. We're going into the Sivus. And Sivus comes and says, I don't understand what's the more over here. He says, in the beginning there was no ribis, right? When the guy lent the year money to the year, there was no ribis. And now, so why is the Shach questioning this psak? The psak makes a lot of sense. Istake was, in the beginning there was no ribis. Came the guy and forced him to give him ribis. So it's tol yuv, and therefore it's not chal. So why is the Shach saying psak din tamua? So he says, Nasiba says, maybe the Shach understood the story differently, that the oines wasn't on the ribis. Because if the oines is on the ribis, it's for sure not chal, because it's tol yuv. They hung him when he gave a present, not tol yuv oven. He didn't receive anything for it. Because the whole logic why Mechira Ba'onis works al Yova's oven is because we have Gemilas Das. Because he received money, there's Gemilas Das, and therefore, even though there was no Ratzin, but there was come. But if it's Matana, there's nothing. He didn't receive anything, there's no Gemilas Das. So he says, no, maybe the Oines was not on the Ribis. The Shach understood that the Oines was on the Shtar. He forced him to write the Shtar, like some of the people here said. And therefore, and why did he force him to give the Shtar? He told him, I'm doing you a favor, so I'm giving you something. And for giving you something, I'm forcing you to write me a shtar. So it's a sale. If it's a sale, tell you of his oven works. So therefore the Shach says, psak din tamua. He says that's one way of understanding the Shach. Because he says the psak is not tamua. But if the Shach says psak tamua, we have to understand. The Siva says, so he says that's one way of understanding the Shach. Second reason of understanding the Shach, that the Shach understood that the ribis was there from the beginning. It's not that the ribis was added later like we understood it. The ribis was there from day one. Therefore, it's a chayv barur. Chayv barur, you can't avoid. It's 100%. Whether the guy would go to court or go to Beis Din, he would collect it. So the fact that you afterwards wrote a shtar to confirm a chayv barur doesn't make a difference what brought you to write a shtar. The fact is, nothing changed because of writing the shtar. Shtar only confirmed something which is already known. So therefore, there was nothing, the oines is not there. And therefore, it's a psak din tamua, and you could say it didn't work. That's the two explanations that he explains. Comes the Shoshanas Yaakov and says, I don't understand the Nesivus. And the Nesivus is contradicting himself. This is in the Nesivus, Sifkatan Vav. You look two Nesivus is down, Sifkatan Ches. Over there, which we're going to get to later, the Nesivus over there says in Sifkatan Ches, that if somebody gave a shtar choiv to be able to pater himself to relieve himself from a oinus, there's no gemilas das. Why? Because he didn't give money, you gave a piece of paper. So therefore, over here, that he's trying to explain the shach, that the one of the ways of explaining the shach, that the oinus wasn't giving the shtar choiv, and therefore it should work because the shtar choiv was given for a favor. He says, to save him later, you yourself say that giving a shtar choiv in connection to Oinus is nothing. So same thing should be here. And he says that that's why he doesn't, this teretz of the Nesivis is not a good teretz, because he himself contradicts it. And therefore, we're still tamua, why the Shach says it's tamua. So therefore, Yishan says, no, the reason why the Shach says tamua is simple. He says it's tamua to the Shach because there was no oinus in writing the shtar chayv. The oinus was on receiving the ribis maybe. The shtar chayv was written miratzen. He wanted a favor, so he agreed to write a shtar chayv. So if you gave a matana from your own free will for the purpose of receiving something, even though the matana that you gave came after some other oinus, because the oinus was on taking the ribis 2 months beforehand. That was the oinus. Shtar chayv was not the oinus. The guy had a negotiation with him. Oh, you want this from me? No problem, give me a piece of paper. It's not oinus. I gave you something, you gave me something. Beratzen on both ends. This is confirming an oinus? That's not a problem. So therefore, the Shach says, Psakin Tamuah, Ha'itach Nikum Mevata, such a thing. Yeah, that is how he explains the Shach. Now, if you look in Mishpat Shalom to the Marasham, he brings a very interesting Maharit. Maharit Chelik Aleph Siman Lamed Aleph, which explains the logic of Meidah. When does the Meidah work? Only when the person who says the Meidah, when he said the Meidah, knew every single thing of what's going to happen afterwards. Which means, he had this plan, he knew he's going to do this, and he's going to do that, he's not going to do this, he's not going to do that. And he gave a Meidah on the whole package. But, if he gave a Meidah on something, the Eidim have to know, yeah, it's all kosher. If he gave him a done something, and then a new development occurred in the story, something which was not expected before, and now there's a question, maybe Hitaka agreed to it between now and then. It's a new development, something changed. You were forced to do something, and you're going to do something, but between the moment of Meidah to the moment of action, a big change happened. Could be you did agree to it. What's the example that he's talking about? Then he says the Meidah is no longer valid, because we could say maybe it changed. What's the example? What's the case he's talking about? Someone goes in front of Adam and says, I am going to go, and I'm going to be moide to somebody that I owe him money, because he's forcing me to be moide that. He's not giving me a choice. I'm forced to be moide. And therefore, I have no choice. But I'm telling you, my haidah is it could be a haidah in front of Adam, it could be a haidah in front of everybody. I'm telling you now, my haidah is because of oinus. But what happens between then and now? Each side chose a biter, and they chose a shalosh, and they went to the Torah. And in the Torah, he was moide. So now the moide says, I gave him Meidah beforehand. The other side says, the Mari says it doesn't work. Why? When you said you're going to give them Meidah, you didn't know that you're going to agree to go to a Bezdin afterwards. Maybe when you went to Bezdin, it was Beratzen. And now, you were Beider Yudayim Belev Shalom, he says. That's how Zabla works. And you were Beider Yudayim Belev Shalom, and then you went in front of him and gave him Meidah, and gave your Moide, so it's all good. Now you claim Fakir, because now you're trying to change your mind again. But there was a Ratzin in the middle which changed it. So therefore the Meidah doesn't kick in. Over here. Now, before I continue to one more Nekudah, let's go back to the Tzemach Tzedek I mentioned before. I mentioned Tzemach Tzedek Reis Tzemach Beis Ois Hey, now we know Reis Tzemach Beis Ois Dalet. Over there in Reis Tzemach Beis Ois Dalet, Tzemach Tzedek over there mentions that when somebody agrees to a Bezdin, there still could be oinus afterwards. What's over there? Let's say you agreed to a Bezdin to make a psak, and you didn't agree that the Bezdin should make a pshara. We're just talking about the make a psak regarding the money. and then the Bezdin imposes on you a pshara. You never agreed the Bezdin should impose on you a pshara. So now, when you accept the pshara because you have no choice, the Bezdin wrote it in the psak, that pshara was be'oines. Unless you received upon yourself, you accepted that they could paskin also a pshara. But otherwise, there is a possibility that accepting a Bezdin, what could come out afterwards in Bezdin could be be'oines also. Just pointing that out. So now, why am I saying this? Because now we have the marit that the Mishpat Shalom brings, that if you have a dispute and you make a moidah about something you're going to do, and then you agree to go to a Bezdin, it's considered the moidah is batal. Ask a simple question. Somebody has a tviyah on somebody else. Somebody owes him money. He went to Rav and he got a heter rekos. Why? He has a valid reason up halacha to go to court. Either because it's a chayv barur, according to the marasham, he follows the same marasham that we're talking about in Chuvas, chayv barur, you could go. Or maybe because it's in the city where the Bezdin is connected to the community, it's a din with it. Whatever the reason is, you go there, go, doesn't not misdain over there. Chayv barur means that there's no, we're going to this totally different topic. What's Isser Erkos? Erkos is to be litigated in front of them. When there's a chayv barur, a piece of paper that says you owe me money, and it's confession of judgment, there's no litigation, the court is only a collection agency, and it's not there's no Isser Isdainus according to the Marasham. So Lamar Zogan, that's what it was. But in this town there's a strong Bezdin. The Bezdin starts sending him azmanas, and they're threatening him with suruvim, and they're going to throw him out of shul, and he's going to be embarrassed. Now he goes in front of two Eidim and he says, I'm going to sign a shtar barurus in Bezdin. Why am I going to sign a shtar barurus in Bezdin? Because I'm terrorized by this Bezdin. You have no choice. It's oinus. And if the Eidim are from town and they know the Bezdin, he could be oinsay, because you know who you're dealing with. You're locals. You know what kind of Bezdin they are in town. They could follow through on their threats. So they know that that's what's going on. He signs it. And now the question is, I'm asking, I have no achra on this, does a moidah in such a case helps? Because if you're going to follow the logic of the marit, that the only time a moidah does not work is when it's something which is not which you didn't know, a new change in reality. If you look at that angle of the marit, then this moidah would help, because you knew you're going to the Bezdin, you knew everything's going on. But if you're going to follow the second half of the Maharit, that maybe when he was Mekabel the Dain, he was Mekabel him Belev Shalom, and then afterwards he changed his mind. Maybe over here he could say, he did a Maidah, but maybe when he went in front of the Bezdin, he was Mekabel Belev Shalom. To me, it's noted that the main thing is whether you knew or not. Over here, you knew exactly what you're going yourself into, and therefore the Maidah should work in such a scenario. L'maisa tzarich, and if it becomes L'maisa, then we'll deal with it then. The Mishpat Shalom continues and brings a marshal. It's not a point, interesting marshal. If you gave money for there's a certain dispute and you gave money in the hands of a shalish, and the shalish, yedea be'oinsoy, he knows the oinus that you're going through, then the shalish doesn't even have to, that means the escrow agent who has the money doesn't even have to go to Bezdin to discover it, to deal with it. He knows the oinus, he recognizes the oinus, he's holding the money, he has an obligation to return the money to the guy. No need for Maidah, no need for Bezdin, no need for Eidim, no need for anything else. The fact that I gave you the money in escrow, and you as an escrow agent know that I'm giving it to you by force, and you recognize that the force, and you know the force, and you know everything, that's already enough, no need for Eidim. Now the Mishmeret Shalom, who is on the Mishpat Shalom, is like the Madur Abbas on the Mishpat Shalom, brings from the Bes Yosef in Even Ezer Siman Kuf Lamed, in the name of the Rashbatz, that if the Maidah was not in front of two Eidim, so now if the Baldin, who is the buyer, the one who actually did the oinus, says, he's moide in Bezdin. He says, when I went and I forced him, I didn't really force him, but before I bought it from him, he told me that he's moiser and moida in front of me that it's baonus. Right, so you have the koine is moida in Bezdin, that the moicher told him to his face that I'm only selling it to you, I'm notifying you, I'm only selling it to you baonus. The Beis Yosef says it doesn't help. You need it in front of two eidim. And if it's in front of one aid with the moicher, so it's two, and with the koine, so it's two eidim. Yeah, the koine is the me'anas, but he brings another eid echad with him. The buyer, the seller, brings the eid echad with him and says, "You are eid echad, and you, the one who's forcing me, are the second eid." And I'm telling both of you that I'm doing it baonus. Over there, he says that Ramban has a suffix. Maybe it does work because at the end of the day, it's too kosher. It's too kosher eidim. That's he's not machri over there. If you look at the interest, in Kuf Lamed Daled and Even Oezer.
Why is not it does baldin?
That what? It's not a raya for the oinus. So it does baldin that he said it. But that go back to our original thing. Is Mesiras Meidah something which you have to do in front of two eidim, and otherwise it's as if the oinus never happened? Because our default understanding is Mechira be'oinus works. That's the default. The default understanding Mechira be'oinus works. Default understanding Matana be'oinus does not work. Now you want to be able to undo a Mechira be'oinus. What do you need to do for such a Mechira be'oinus? How much do you have to prove? But he's not. He's saying here. He's saying the buyer is saying it was not. It was not baonus. He told me. He says the buyer says before I bought it from him, he made a maidah to whatever shtusim. Yes, he made a maidah, and I don't believe it because it wasn't baonus. Go prove it. I have the karka now. I have the karka, not you. I am the one who supposedly made the oinus. I'm telling you I didn't do the oinus. He says that he made a maidah in front of me. Yes, he said a bunch of things. One of the things he said was that I don't believe him then, I don't believe him now. I'm telling you now there was no oinus. My word against his word. It doesn't work. The Gilui Das doesn't work in such a scenario. For the Gilui Das to work, it has to be in front of two. In this case, yeah, I just pointed out to you there's a difference. By Mechira, our default thought is that Mechira Ba'oinus works. By Matana, our default thought is that Matana Ba'oinus does not work. Comes the Kesef HaKodshim right away and tells you, have a Chkira. Kesef HaKodshim, have a Chkira. When you have a Matana and you're Moiser Moidah in front of one aid, maybe it should work. Yeah, for the same logic. Even by a matana. For sure by a matana. Maybe even by a mecher. Why? Because you're megala das. And maybe by a mechira also should work. Why? Because you're megala das. Eid echad could be pointed you from a shvuah. Eid echad am sayeya could be pointed you from a shvuah. So you say, I did it baonus. The buyer says it was berotzen. He's makchish. Now you have to do nishba v'naitel, yeah? We have eid echad mesayeya, nishba nifta. You have eid echad mesayeya. So he says that doesn't. Maybe it should work. Maybe eid echad should work. But he says no. Could be you need taka too. Why? Because the act of giving is stronger. Is an action that's stronger than words. So the fact that you did a gilui das, to be able to undo an action, you have to have two eidim to prove verkehrt. And it's not the same. In front of an eid echad is only enough to save you from a shvuah. It's not enough to change a reality. But in front of two is enough to change a reality. So therefore, since you made an action of giving, you would need two. And he says, by me it's tzarich yun. The Kesef HaKodshim says, by me I'm not sure which way it's going to do. L'maise, all the poskim say you need two, and eid echad doesn't work. And he says, I don't understand why, and he leaves it in tzarich yun. Now I mentioned before about the Erech HaShulchan that discusses whether the eidim whether the Eidim have to be makir the oinus or not. So the Sifkot and Daled and Sifkot and Hey in Erech HaShulchan, he goes and he brings the Marikash in Siman Kuf Yud Zayin, that if the Eidim wrote in the Moidah that they were makir ba'oinus, that's the Nusach. We recognize that he has oinus. And then you call them back to Bezdin and you ask them, what's the oinus? You signed that he was makir ba'oinus. What was the oinus exactly? They said, we have no idea. He told us he has an oinus and it made sense to us. So we wrote Kiru ba'oinus. So the Marikash says it's still trusted. We don't say that it's that their second words are choiz, toyin v'choiz are undoing the previous words. They're still trusted. Why? Because could be they were amaratzim, they're amaratzim, and they thought that it works. Then in Sifkot and Daled and in Sifkot and Hey, the Erech HaShulchan brings a whole list, starting from Rabbi Yehuda ben Arash, and a bunch of other ones, that the Eidim have to recognize the oinus not only based on his words. It's not enough to do it. And if they did not do it, we say the Eidim made a mistake by signing such a paper. It's a shtar with a mistake. The shtar is batal. The Nesivis in Chidushim Sifkat and Tes paskins pretty much in simple similar to this idea, that the Eidim, if the Eidim were asked afterwards, it's a little bit connected but not directly connected. If the Eidim come and they say, yes, we signed the paper that there was an oinus, but now we're telling you the Bezdin that there was not really an oinus, then the Meidah is completely batal. Why? They are allowed to, if they cannot confirm that they were makir the oinus and explain to Bezdin what the oinus is, according to most shittas, and so it's possible like that also, then their whole testimony is by the wayside. Just because they were told there's an oinus, or just because they signed there is an oinus, is nothing until they're able to say what the oinus is. That is pretty much what's connected to Sif Aleph. Comes to Mechaber and Sif Beis and continues. And all this we're talking about is by Mechira, but by Matane or Mechila, you're Meichel something, you waive something that you owe be'oinus. The Eidim don't have to know to be makir be'oinsoi. It's enough to just rely on the words of the guy who is giving it, even without any knowledge. And in Sif Gimel, the Mechaber says the pshat is like a mecher, not like a matane. Yeah, and so we have mechile and matane. Mechile is like matane, and pshat is like mechire. Matane you don't have to know, and therefore mechile also not. And pshat is like a mechire sale, and you do have to know. Why does mechile and matane you don't have to know? The two rights. Because by a mechire, by a sale, you receive money. And therefore, there's a gmilus das and a kinyan. But by mechila and matane, where you don't receive anything for giving a present, there's no gmilus das. There's no proof of gmilus das. If there's no proof of gmilus das, then the kinyan never kicked in. That's the tur. The Beis Yosef is the one that says a pshara, and name of the Rama, a pshara is similar to a sale. Why? Why is a pshara similar to a sale? Because what's a pshara? Pshara is I'm letting go of part of what I'm owed, I'm accepting a smaller amount. So he says, the Teveya is willing to go to a pshara. Why? Because he's worried, he's going to go to Bezdin, he's going to lose everything. Bezdin is a big risk. He might lose, he might get zero. The other guy is worried, I'm going to go to Bezdin, they're going to make me pay everything. So they're both walking into this negotiation with this fear that each one is going to lose everything. And they agree to pay part. So what is, both of them are getting peace of mind, they're getting something from this transaction. the buyer is, or not the buyer, I mean the receiver of the money, by pshara, is getting part of the money, so he's gemilas das to sell, to waive his rights. The one who gives the money is receiving a waiver of all claims against him. It's also giving him peace of mind. So therefore, it's a transaction which, or in legal American language, there was consideration given for it. There was consideration, so it works. And therefore, it's similar to mechira, to a sale. And if you have him, if you make a moidah, the moidah has to be strong enough that they should know the oinus. But that is the b'siyasif regarding a pshara. The shach in Sifkot and Hey on this Sa'if says I have a marash dam. The marash dam bechlal has a doubt on mechila in itself. If mechila is like a mechira or like a matan like a mechira. He just points out. He says maybe it's bechlal, not maybe it's like a mechira. Matan is matane, but mechila, that you're waiving something that you were owed, maybe it's not a matane, maybe it's like a mecher. Who knows? He leaves it as a tzarechiyun, the shach brings it, leaves it as a suffix. Now, the shach also brings from the Beis Yosef that a person who gave a shvuah, who did a shvuah, who took an oath to give a matana, and afterwards, before he gave the matana, after he gave the shvuah, he made a mesiras meidah. What's a mesiras meidah? I made a shvuah, so I bound myself to do something. However, I don't really want to do it. I'm right now going to give this present based on the shvuah, but you should know that I'm not doing it from my own heart. I'm only doing it because of the shvuah. So he brings in the Beis Yosef and the Bedek Abayis, Karev,
Made a shvuah, that means you're making that
I made a shvuah, I'm going to give him a matana. And then I'm supposed to give him a matana in a month from now. Good, but why? But then I go in front of Adam and I say, I'm being moiser moidah, that the reason I'm giving the present is because I was nishba, not because I really want to. Maybe then why I wanted it. I made a shvuah. But that's mitzad shvuah. Because why am I doing it? I have oinus. I have oinus from the Eibishter. The Eibishter is going to kill me if I don't follow the shvuah. It's a big yisurim. Someone's over al shvuah say. I'm being oinus. I'm in front of oinus. So he says, the Bedek Abayis says, Korev Adovar. It's close to say that it is nothing. It has no validity. The Shach says, but hey, don't jump too fast to conclusions about what happened during the Shvuah. During the Shvuah, he also has to say that. That means it only works if during the Shvuah he says that even this I'm doing Shalai B'Ratzon. And afterwards he gives, so when he did the shvuah, he said he's doing it not from his own free will. Then afterwards, when he's about to give it, he goes in front of two Eidim and he tells them, you should know I'm doing it only because of the shvuah, not because I want to do it. Then it works. Then he could say that it's not a matana. Which implies if it's not so, if he really did want to do it, like you asked before, then it doesn't work anymore. But in the Sivis, if you look at the Sivis Sifkot and Tes, the second half of Sifkot and Tes in Biurim takes apart this whole thing, says makes absolutely no sense. Now, just interesting. That's that. Now the Ktos. Before we go to the Ktos, interesting point. There is the Sefer Piskei HaMishpat, which is the knockoff of Piskei Tshuvos and Choshen Mishpat. There's no Piskei Tshuvos, but they copied the Sharblat. Brings a machlekes between the Nachlas Shiva and Ezer Mekudesh. He says if a Mechutin agreed to give a certain amount of money in the dunya, and he says it's ba'inus, it's matana and it's ba'inus. Why is it matana ba'inus? Because if I wouldn't give this, I wouldn't commit an apartment for and 10 years in Kailo, I would not be able to get a choshen from the yeshiva. Therefore, I'm stuck. So it's oinus. So the Ezer Mekuder says that it's not, that it's like a mecher, not like a matana. Can't say it's a matana. You want to give him adah, you have to give him adah, and the Edom have to be makir ba'oinse, mamash makir ba'oinse. Then you could say that in the dunya commitment was shaloikadin. The Nachal Shiva says, that's the Nachal Shiva disagrees. It says it makes absolutely no sense. It says every single shidduch requires this. So you're going to now, every single guy is going to come and say that because he wanted his daughter to get married, he had to give him the dunya and tzainas. Moidah doesn't even work. Nachal Shiva says Moidah doesn't work. He says nobody's going to ever pay in the dunyas. Everybody's going to say, well, the only reason I gave him the dunya is because I wanted to have a shidduch. Oh, duh, that's the only way you're going to get a shidduch, is within the dunya. It's not oinus.
People complaining that you have to pay for something you bought.
Exactly. You got something, you pay for it. So that's... Huh? That's what Nachal Shiva says. The Ezer Mekuder says it is a oinus.
Or else you say it's oinus and a plus mitzvah.
It's a oinus like a mecher.
No, but maybe it's a mitzvah. And it's a mitzvah also, we say.
Why is it a oinus mitzvah?
Honestly, to do...
To buy an expensive esrog.
Mitzvah is
Huh?
by doing, paying money. Is that considered oinus?
What, buying kalabi esrog?
What?
Buying kalabi esrog? It's more expensive. You say it's a oinus. What are you going to do? I'm a Lubavitch, I have to buy esrog. Huh? What?
Mitzvah al this is bita.
Hasi is bita, yeah.
So it's the mitzvah, so then it's a...
So he's oinus. Can sein. Can sein.
Can rely on it.
As Nachal Shiva says, it doesn't fly. Now, the Ktsas points out over here that if you look in Shulchan Aruch Siman Yud Beis, Choshen Mishpat, over there it says that if somebody was threatened and terrorized until he was maskim to the pshara, he could go back and cancel the pshara. Oy bazoi, how can you say that a moidah? How can you say that a pshara is like a mechira? We say a pshara is like a mechira, then that means that the default understanding is that it works unless you have a meidah. In Siman Yud Beis, it says that a threatened mechira doesn't work. A threatened pshara doesn't work. Why is that? So he says, no, it's very simple. Over here, in Siman Yud Beis, what are we talking about? That the person who was forced into a pshara after there was a clear din and it's clear 100% that he's right. He's supposed to receive $100,000 and they forced him to a pshara. Then it's taken oinus. But over here we're talking about it. It's before the psak din came out. There's akhoshes, there's asexual, there's a thing. So he's masking to a pshara to relieve himself because he's not sure what's going to happen. Yeah, that's how the Ktsas explains. The Imri Baruch right away on the Haggais and the Ktsas says, it makes no sense because if you look in Siman Yud Beis, it's talking about the Kashis and the Isaac Shavuot and everything else. So I don't understand how you separate between the two, and the Kasha remains the Kasha. The Imri Baruch, it's in the Haggais on the Ktsas. The Nesivis over here, and Beurim Sifkot and Zayin brings the Smeh. What does the Smeh say? That by a Mechila, it's in the bottom, they have like a goyes, like a whole list of a goyes. I think it's number 3. The Nesivis in Beurim Sifkot and Zayin brings what the Smeh says. What does the Smeh say in Sifkot Pches? The Smeh brings the name of the Tur, that when you have a Mechila, not a Mechila, even if there is no oinus, but he says in front of Adam, I'm giving this matanan not because I want to. He's not saying I was forced to. He says I'm giving it not because I want to. It's already bottle. Why? Because only by mechira you have gemirus das, because you receive something. By matanan there's no gemirus das. So the mere fact that he's saying that I'm giving it not from my own free will. He's not saying that the guy is forcing him to do it, just giving it from my own free will. It's already enough to eliminate the matana. comes in the Sivas and says, from the Rashbam and from a lot of other poskim, it's mashma. The whole reason why by a matana, Mesiras Meidah works without the Eidim knowing what the oinus is because we say that by a matana, the default understanding is that if you give something and you're not interested in giving it, it's because there was oinus. But if you have a knowledge that there was no oinus, how can you mevatel it? He doesn't say there's oinus. He says, oh, if you want to say that there's an oinus, if a guy does not say there's an oinus, if the Edom do not know that what the oinus is, but the guy says there was an oinus, so we say probably there was an oinus. That's the default. Otherwise he wouldn't give it. But stamazay to be mevatel by any case where you don't know that there was a full will, that doesn't make any sense. So he says no. Therefore, nishtazay pasher mevatel every matane because of oinus. He says, if the Nesiva says like this, if the oinus is on you to do something by a matana, and therefore you did it, you gave the matana because you were forced to, then it's batal. But if there was an oinus on you, and for you to be able to alleviate the pressure of the oinus, they didn't tell you have to give a matana, they were made an oinus to you. And afterwards, because of that oinus, you from your own free will wanted to pater yourself from the pressure, or from the terrorism, or from the oinus, or from all these things, then it does work. Then the matana is valid, and unless you're moiser a proper meidah, then it's the default is that it does work. Yeah, and then he continues more. And
In at Sif Vav, it brings from the Rambam, from Chada. She'ein hilchel matana ela achad gilui das hanisim.
Yeah, what's Gilui Das?
So if he says he doesn't want to, it doesn't have to be a Einah.
That's based on the same. The Torah says that also. That's what the Smith says, and then the Siva says it makes no sense. The Siva says it makes no sense. He's arguing with the Mechaber. He's arguing with the one in the Mechaber says. He says that's what he explains that it's nishtazah. He says that what are we talking about? He says if it's something that you did it because you were forced into it to do this action, then the Mechira is batal without a meidah. But if you chose from your own free will, that's the Mirtzonei HaTov. I chose to give this for the purpose of getting rid of some other oinus that I have on me, then it's not considered a matana me'oinus unless you give a meidah. And Sifkot and Ches, which we mentioned before, the Nesiva says that whether it's by mechira or by matana, makes no difference. If the reason why you gave it is to be potter from the oinus, if you gave it, then it's not considered batal unless you gave a meidah. And then he says, but when you give a shtar chayv, even what you mentioned before, even if the reason why you gave the shtar chayv is not because you were forced to give the shtar chayv, but because there's a separate oinus on you, and to be able to pater yourself from the oinus you gave a shtar chayv, so l'chayra, this should be like you mentioned in Sifkot and Zayin, that it should not be batal unless you give him a meidah because it was mirtzayin chatev. He says when giving a shtar chayv, it doesn't work like that. Unless you give him a meidah, unless it's batal it's batal regardless. Why? Because there's no gemilas das, because you're not getting anything at the time of giving this thing. And the same thing he writes in Chidush and Sifkot and Yud. Comes the Pamoin Zov and Sifkot and Gimel, and says that this is the psak of the Marchash also, and he says happens to be that this idea that they make a differentiation between being forced to give him matana and choosing to give him matana to avoid a oinus, but the oinus is not on giving the matana, is clearly in Shulchan Aruch. You can medayik it from Shulchan Aruch in Sif Daled, because in Sif Daled the Mechaber says in the end, regarding, he uses the words v'havei k'moi she'ansuhu litein matana. Pamoin Zav says, what's ansuhu? On Suhu, the Mechaber says, litin matana. The oinus was to give something. That's what they forced him to do. It's the charaya that if the oinus was not, the oinus was not that you should give him matana, but the oinus was, and you chose to give him matana to avoid the oinus, that's not in that same category. That's what the Pemain Zav says. Regarding a pshare, now let's move to a pshare. Regarding a pshare, we mentioned already what the Ktsas says, and we mentioned the Imri Baruch that disagrees with it, and it says that Kasha is still there, still from Siman Yud Beis to here. What kind of pshares work and what not, and we mentioned what the Beis Yosef says, that by a pshare is because you're in doubt what's going to be the outcome, and therefore you decided. So you have in the Sivus and Beauties of Cotton Tess, says that a pshare is like a sale only when the din is in a doubt, and you're not sure which way it's going to work for you. And therefore you're ready to do it. Like the Beis Yosef says, you're ready to do a pshare because you're not confident in your position that you're going to do something. And therefore, you're getting something, and there's Gmilas Das for this transfer. But if it's a din barur, clear din, and they force you to do it, to make a pshare, it's not like a mechir, it's like a matana. And then he continues and he says another point. This whole thing that we say that pshare is like a mechira is only if the kfir was on the act of a pshare, but not on the amount. And then the bezdin or the people, they forced, he said, you must do a pshare. And then he sat and negotiated and then settled for a certain amount based on his own understanding. Then we say it's like a mechira. Why? Because he came from his own intellect, he came to the realization, I was forced to do a pshare. But I'm making my own cheshbonis, and I came to the good, this is the number that I could settle for. But if they were koi for him, not only to do a pshare, but also how much to do a pshare for, then it's b'chlal not a pshare. It's not, even by a mechira it's nisbatel, malachas kam v'kam by a matan it's nisbatel, you can't compare it to matan, you can't compare it to mechira, it's b'chlal completely batel. And he says, since we're talking about psharas which become batel, I'm just putting another point in the Siva says, if the whole reason why you made the pshara is because of a mistake, yeah, why did you make, what's the mistake that you did? You thought there was akhasha, and you thought that he denies everything, so you thought that it's going to be a big dentaire, you don't have enough eidim, v'chulu v'chulu, it's all going to fall, so you agreed to make a pshara. And then afterwards you found Edom, and you brought Edom, or you found a star that proves your point. So your whole mechila and pshare was betos, based on you not knowing what's going to be. So then that a pshare betos is also batel. However, the Siva says, if the akhasha was only a partial akhasha, that means the guy says, I only owe you 50,000. Instead of not 100, not 80. You say I owe you 80, I say you owe me 50. I say I owe you 50. And then he says, okay. And he made a pshare with the guy to accept the 50. He says, you know what, I'm not going to fight with you. Let's settle it. And then later he finds documents or whatever it is. Then in such a case, then it's already valid. Why? Because you didn't make the pshara based on the mistake of you making a cheshbon that you're not going to have any rayas. You made the pshara because the other guy said, I'm willing to give you 50. The other guy said, I'm willing to give you 50. In such a case, the pshara works. Huh? No, because today you sign a paper that you're mekabel psharas and everything else. Huh? No, you're mekabel and shtar butter. It's also for a pshara.
Yeah, but you could say I made a midah.
Today midas don't. We very rarely do we do midas.
Someone does midah.
If someone does a midah and he has a proof of it, then it works. Yeah. Anyways, okay. We'll be mamshechim et Hashem next week. Sif Daled and Sif Zayin.